Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Layers podcast. I'm your host, Tayo, and I'm so excited to have you join us today. Today's conversation is about an issue that's close to my heart. Living in London, and I'm sure that anyone living in a big city has noticed that there seems to be an increasing number of people who are homeless. For many of us, we often don't know what to say, what to do, how to help, or even what to think of it. Today's conversation is designed to add layers to your thinking, which we hope will inspire and encourage you to approach the situation from a different perspective and actually approach people from a different perspective. I'm joined today by my friend Itse, who leads Street Cafe, well, Street Cafe as we like to call it. Street Cafe is a non-profit that seeks to build community and integrate homeless people back into society through social connection. And I'm sure many of you have seen House of Cinn, who they partner with, which is using cinnamon goodies to help the homeless. It's going to be such a good chat, guys. So grab a drink, relax, and enjoy the conversation. Hi, Itse.
Hi, Taya.
I'm excited to have you here today to talk about an issue that I feel is often overlooked but very apparent in our society.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I was actually looking at some stats and I saw that Shelter estimates that about 320,000 people in the UK are homeless and 60% of those people are in London.
Yeah.
So Street Cafe provides what? Tell us about Street Cafe.
Right. So the goal of Street Cafe is to really provide social and emotional support for people that find themselves usually in a street homeless position. Of course, there are so many other different forms of homelessness that are less visible, but we work primarily with people who are rough sleeping, street homeless, and just being able to be the support networks that are so often absent. Like when people find themselves in that situation, it's so often due to a breakdown of these kind of relationships that would be needed to help them get out of that situation. And the heart behind it is really just to be able to provide the support to give people an avenue out. You know, it can be so hard to find your way out of a situation like that when you're on your own and you don't have anyone to even motivate you or to tell you that it's going to be okay, or to tell you that you know, we can get through this. And the heart is just to be that kind of social, emotional support network for people and give them some consistent positive relationships. There's so many negative different encounters they can have that shape the way they view themselves and the situation, and having some consistency and some positivity, it goes a long way. So yeah, that's the heart behind what we provide.
That's great. So I like what you said about, number one, the different types of homelessness that are not as visible.
Yeah.
Should we just expand on that quickly before we go into the rest of
Yeah, of course. I think a lot of the government statistics are based on statutory homelessness, which is, so you find yourself in a situation where you're at threat of losing your home, or you don't have a place of your own to stay. So this could mean that you're couch surfing, or that you're in danger of being evicted from your home. You can apply to be considered homeless, like in a technical governmental term. You know, I think a lot of times we think homelessness equals rough sleeping, but that's just a proportion of people that experience homelessness. I think we would all know a friend who at some point didn't have a place to stay and was sofa surfing. And yeah, that's a huge proportion of people who are in the hidden homeless, you know, that just don't have a place of their own to stay.
Okay. No, it's true. I feel like even not having a place to stay is added mental stress for anybody, regardless. How have you noticed people's mental health? Like, what is the most apparent thing when you're working with, so at Street Cafe, I also serve on Street Cafe, and we call our service users. What would you say is the most apparent effect of homelessness on a person's mental health?
I would say, funnily enough, it's not like an overwhelming sadness. It's like we can encounter people who are actually quite upbeat and sometimes bring more brightness to our day than the other way around. I would say it's this mindset of not being able to look beyond that present day.
Okay.
Is like I don't know, it doesn't sound maybe as extreme as it is, but you could ask somebody, oh, what are your plans for the week? Or sometimes even like the year, and they're like, I'm just trying to get through the day, you know? That's my focus, just to be okay for today, have enough food for today, and that's it. And you say, oh, we'll hope to see you next week, and they're like, it's just, I don't know, I think we have, or my friends that aren't homeless have more of like a natural propensity to just think about the future in a way that's not completely hopeless, you know? And I think that has a huge effect on mental health when you can't see yourself beyond that present day. It's like, how could you possibly imagine yourself in a better situation? You can't even imagine. You're so focused on just surviving that day, you know?
Yeah, it's like what we're having. Isha and I were having a conversation before we started recording, and I was telling her about this Channel 5 documentary on rich kids go homeless, and there was one of the kids on the show. I was saying how quickly he got demoralized, and in a way, kind of just constantly experiencing rejection just made him kind of retreat. And I remember sitting outside Pret at Russell Square, and there was a man outside. He was selling the big issue, and I was in the coffee shop and I was watching him from the window. And I must have been there for about 30 minutes. And for me, it wasn't just that not one person gave him money, but that there was no eye contact. I feel like when you walk through your days kind of discouraged like that, I think that people don't understand how that affects how you go about life, like how you like why are you motivated for the next day when you don't necessarily have a responsibility, a job, or something to do. It kind of feels like even with the kid on the show trying to get shelter that day, not having ID, not having this, it's kind of like you lose any kind of like zeal for the
100%.
next day.
And I think even like I know quite a few gentlemen that don't beg or bus, they're street homeless, but they just survive off food donations, so different kind of food handouts. And so you would think that their direction they face is less direct because they're not necessarily sitting on the street being ignored, but you still hear it just in the way they speak about themselves, of just that feeling of I've made nothing of myself. It's really it puts someone's self-worth down. And I think it's how can you expect somebody to be in a position where they can hope for tomorrow or imagine a better future for themselves when they don't even think they're deserving of it? And I think a lot of the rejection that you spoke about feeds into that, you know? It's like, do I even deserve to be in a different position than I am right now?
Wow. Yeah. Speaking of the rejection, I think there's the rejection that you face on the street, but I often find that when I speak to our service users that there is already rejection in their past before they became homeless. So if for a few minutes maybe we can just have a chat about, so there's so many preconceived notions that people have when it comes to homelessness, why people are homeless, or why not just why people are homeless, but why they stay homeless. So you often hear, I don't want to give people money because I don't know if they're going to use my money to buy drugs. I don't, all these kind of things. What would you say are the preconceived notions, and how do we clarify those things? Like, what are the things that people just don't know because they don't know?
I think you mentioning drug abuse, I think one of the most preconceived notions, even myself, like before I started working with the homeless community, you assume that people find themselves in a situation where they're abusing drugs and then because of their drug abuse end up on the street. But from most people that I've spoken to, it's the other way around, that people find themselves in a situation where they're not substance abusing at all, end up on the streets, and then find themselves in a situation where they're now exposed to heavy substance abuse or turn to that as kind of a numbing mechanism. And it's like they're not homeless because they're drug users, but there's a percentage of people that engage in drug activity after becoming homeless. And I think a lot of the time, I remember somebody asked me, what's the most common reason I find for people being on the street? And at the time, the most common reason that I heard expressed to me was relationship breakdown. Guys who
absolutely
had either left their wives or their wives had left them, and their wives or girlfriends were the ones that stayed in the property, and they were kicked out, more or less.
Yeah.
And it was just, people were just shocked that, like, it's such a normal, like, I don't know, it's such a normal relational problem to have. Like, who hasn't been through a breakup? How could it be something so, like, simple that could lead to so many people being on the street? And so I think that's kind of counters the preconceived notion that, I don't know, these are completely off the rails drug abusers that just find themselves on the street because they have lost it, you know, as opposed to people that are just having, like, family relational issues.
I think I started serving as with Street Caf. Can you believe it's almost, I think it's been 2 years now.
Yeah, it has.
And wow, time goes by so fast.
2018.
18 actually.
Yeah.
And I remember my second week, because we were doing every every other Sunday. And I remember my first or second week, I met a guy, an American guy. He was like, you know, I'm homeless because my girlfriend, I came here, and I think if you're American, you need a work visa, but I don't think you need a visa to stay for a couple of months or something. I don't know. And he had been staying with his girlfriend. No, he was married, and then they got divorced, and then he lost his job, I think around the same time. He just didn't have enough money to get back to the States, and he was homeless. And I remember just standing there thinking, so all your documents are expired.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can now open this bank account or something. Like, you can't renew these things. Because you don't have an address. And now finding a place to stay is harder because these are all expired documents. For all they know, it might not be you.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wow. I don't know. It really made me unsettled because it was like, he didn't seem to have a drug problem. He didn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't violent. Nothing. It was just, this is a situation that he was like, I try and clean this. I think he told me, try and clean this bar or that bar and try and get like a little bit of money and save up so that he can go to the American embassy and get a passport or something like that. I was like, oh wow. So we spoke about different reasons why people become homeless, but also how people stay homeless. So this thing about not having an ID and not having an address, why is that such an issue?
You know, I think you touched on it perfectly, and it's something that we've referred to in our language is the cycles of homelessness and poverty. It's like a downward spiral, you know? It's like from not having ID to not being able to open a bank account, to not being able to get a proper job, to not being able to do anything, you know? It's just like, it's so hard to break that kind of loop once you get into it. And I think that, I guess this is just personal opinion, not based on any stats. I think a huge reason why people stay trapped in those cycles is because whenever any of us in our daily lives are about to drop into a spiral, we have a friend or a family member who will reach down and pull you back out, you know? Or who'll be able to say, you need help with getting the ID? I'm coming to the appointment with you this week. Let's go. Oh, you need help with the bank account? Don't worry, I'll loan you money this week while you're saving up for this X, Y, and Z. And most of the homeless people that I've met on the streets, they don't have that family support network. They're completely isolated from that. So it's like, it's not just they're not having the ID, they're not having jobs, it's not having anyone to help you with any of those things. It's like, I think we can sometimes expect so much of people to do things on their own, and we do nothing on our own. Like how many days do we go without even somebody just asking us, how are we? You know? And imagine you have zero support network. So it's like something as simple to me and you, like Tyra, if you needed to go to the American embassy to get something, you would have no problem. If you didn't have any money to get there, somebody would order you an Uber, somebody would come with you. If you need help to fill out the document, you didn't understand the question, you have someone to ask. It's just like little things like that. It just makes it, for me, it's the absence of those physical resources that can cause They're the obvious things, you know, not
Yeah.
having that ID. But then
Yeah.
it's the absence of the social support that makes not having the ID. It's like a cycle. Like, how do you get out of that on your own?
Yeah.
But I think for me, a lot of the reason why people stay trapped in that cycle is because they don't have the support networks to help them overcome those challenges. I don't think like there are processes you can go through to get ID. It's just
Yeah.
hard to do that on your own when you're worrying about what you're going to eat that day and you've slept outside in the cold all night, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's about I forgot my train of thought now. I think about that social support. What you said was so good, that no one does life alone,
Yeah.
really. It's not natural to do life alone. And I feel like even being in this season of like COVID, everybody's like, oh,
Yeah.
but people isolating alone and their mental health. But it's like, this is for a time period. No, no one is like minimizing the effects of like isolating
Yeah.
alone. But if that's for a specific time period, but for that person, it's just indefinitely.
Yeah, that's all they
And
know from a certain point, you know?
I it's so unsettling because I remember one time we were out doing outreach and I said, hey, would you like to come back? We have pizza. It said to us, one of the service users on the street, I said, would you like to come back? We have pizza. We have a drink. He was like, I was like, and have a chat. He was like, a chat? He
Yeah.
packed up his stuff. Like he just got up.
Yeah.
And I think all of us were kind of taken aback. But then as we were
Yeah.
walking back, I kind of just thought, he doesn't he doesn't care about the food and the drink. He just wanted to
Yeah.
have a chat with someone. And he
I
ended up
can,
getting
yeah.
really emotional that day with us, just sitting there having a chat. But I felt like he was getting emotional, but I think it was just a thing of like people asked him what his name was, people
Yeah.
asked him about his life, his story, and he just sat there and he ended up crying, ended up crying, and all of us ended up crying, I think, towards the end of the night. Um, yeah, it's
It's part of the human condition to want to be known, loved, valued, and part of a network. We're social
mm,
beings, you know? That's not news to anyone. So I think that the fact that that resonates with people so much, it's a sentiment that I've heard echoed in so many different conversations we've had with service users. But
mm,
I had a guy tell me once, you know, in London, best place to be homeless because you can survive, you can
mm,
find food, you'll get 3 square meals a day. But in terms of being helped up out of that, having friends and family around you, that's the kind of stuff that you can't find on every street corner,
mm,
you know?
yeah,
One of the guys I was talking to, he was like, oh, with Corona, there's even more food on the street.
mm.
He was telling me about all the different meals that you can get. And it was like what you're saying about this guy, that he wasn't really fussed about the pizza or the
Mm,
drink because he knows that he can find that in London. And it's not putting down any of the great efforts that people go through to provide that food, because of course people need to eat. But
yeah.
it it's definitely rarer and harder to find genuine conversation and people that will genuinely want to know your name and your
Mm,
story.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I I was thinking of I've often heard it said actually that London is the loneliest city in the world. And I
Mm.
feel like I have a strong support network with my family and my friends, my
Yeah.
community. But there are often times that I get home from work, like I live alone, I get home from work and I'm just like, oh, I just feel so lonely. So
Yeah.
if that's with everything added, so imagine with everything taken away.
Yeah.
It's very
Very isolating.
very isolating. So speaking of isolation now,
Hmm.
I find, so like you and I were having a conversation, I said there's certain things that show, well, for me personally, that I feel like this is a physical representation of the collective consciousness of, let's say, the world. For
Yeah.
example, the young Syrian boy who was washed up on the beach a few years
Yeah.
ago. I felt like that was a physical expression of the collective consciousness of the world, and how we had kind of just ignored everything that was happening up
Yeah.
until that point. And I feel like in London, homelessness is an expression of that very thing, because I feel like everyone is always, London kind of has a sense of everyone is just about themselves and is
Yeah.
about doing their own thing. And I just feel like that thing of isolation where people are just not seen. But then I feel like people come in contact with things. So you could be on the train, and if you live in London, you've had this experience where
Yeah.
where a homeless person comes on the train. It's like, I'm sorry guys, I just need change. The carriage
Yeah.
becomes awkward. People
Yeah.
can't even look up. All of a sudden the book is more interesting than it was a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
I feel like people either they respond in guilt or they feel so awkward and they turn away, or
Yeah.
some of them are just, to be honest, some of them are just outright mean.
Yeah.
What's your advice on how people can respond from a place of that's actually useful as
Yeah.
opposed to guilt?
I don't know, I think the first thing I'd say is that I relate to those people, you know. I'm not going to pretend that like I'm a saint, and that when that person says, "Oh, does anyone have any change on the tube?" I'm like rushing to wrap my
Hi,
arms around
me.
the person, you know, and empty out my wallet. Like, I understand that. I think even just in British culture anyway, like, people asking for money is weird. We don't do that. You know?
Yeah.
Talk about like in public, and everyone in the carriage knows that they have some form of money on them anyway, you know, and everyone's kind of like avoiding the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to be rude, but at the same time, everyone's kind of trying to maintain the distance from this person. I think it's understandable that people don't really know how best to react, and a lot of times people do respond out of guilt. And a few of the government authorities that I've had conversations with that work with the homeless community advise people not to give out money, and not for the sense of, oh, people are just gonna go and use it on drugs, and not to tarnish everyone with that brush, but more with the view that is not a long-term solution, you know. That in that situation, perhaps that person needs £1, but what they need more is the support and a strategy to get out of that situation in the long term. And so it can be quite hard in that moment to, even with it's a bit of a conflict, because it's like you want to help that person now, and that option is available to you. You can just pull out money of your wallet and do that and tick that box. But when it comes to how can I help in the long term, it's a really hard question to answer. And I think for me, it's not simple, it's not straightforward, but I think that being part of an organization or supporting an organization who make it their mission and commitment to find people like that and help them is one way that you can be part of a long-term solution, and not just, I don't know, erase the guilt and awkwardness in 1 second and give that person £1 and not think about it any longer, but think, how can I make a long-term commitment to supporting organizations that look for people like these, you know, go out on the streets, look for people like these, and have a commitment to helping not just that one person that you see on the tube, but the people scattered all across London, you know. And I think for me, I try to make eye contact with the people on the tube, so it's not just like they're talking to the ground, you know, and say, look, I'm really sorry, I don't have any change on me. And usually I don't. And I think that sometimes if I have some food on me, it doesn't hurt anyone to offer them some food, you know. But for me, it's making a commitment to be part of long-term change, and that can look so different for so many different people, you know. But that's what I would encourage people to do, whether that's volunteering with an organization like Street Camp, donating to somewhere like Crisis, or I don't know, just making a commitment to be part of long-term change, and making a commitment to not look down on that person in that moment, even if it's uncomfortable, but maybe even just offering a smile as they walk by, you know. Because I think it's quite a demoralizing thing to have to do, you know.
It is.
Stand up in front of a bunch of Londoners who you know are about to ignore you and ask them
judge
for money.
you.
So I think just making that, even if it's, I don't know, it's a subtle thing, you know, but making that person not feel like dirt as they walk through because I've seen people like cover their noses and hide their faces, and I think that is only going to make somebody feel like crap. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on podcast.
You are. It's fine. Okay. Not feeling like crap. I feel like even the label of this is a homeless person, I feel takes away bits of their humanity.
100%.
And I always I feel like there's so many things that create separation in society. This person is disabled, that person is homeless, or this person is a refugee, and it's almost like once you allot that title to them, it's like something's taken away. I don't know if I'm like wrong for saying that, but I think if we remove away just the homelessness, it's just remembering that we're dealing with people, and
Yeah,
they have a
definitely.
name. So if you work in the city or you're on your way back home and you see um, a person that you see all the time, it might just be worth asking, what's your name?
Yeah,
It might just be worth not just. So I have this thing where I don't just buy things for homeless people. I ask, what do you want?
yeah,
Because I feel like there are very subtle ways to to humanize people, if that makes sense.
mm,
Like you have a choice. Like sometimes they're a bit shy. I'm like, do you want a Coke? Do you want water? And then it's
mm,
almost like they felt shy, like they couldn't ask for a Coke. But I feel like if I went out and someone gave me, I don't know, a prawn and or egg and watercress sandwich, I'm not. That's like I would be like.
yeah.
I know people say, "Oh, beggars can't be choosers," but I would be very like, "Oh God, this
I've
god,
heard so
god awful
many funny
sandwich."
stories about guys that are like, this guy was like, somebody walked up to me and gave me a box of cereal, like just a box of cereal. And he was like, I know I'm homeless, but I'm not going to just eat crunchy nut with my hands off the street, you know? And I think is that sentiment of, yeah, beggars can't be choosers, just dash them anything and they'll be
Yeah,
ever so grateful. But
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lady offer a homeless guy. She was like, oh, God. She's like, are you hungry? He was like, oh, yeah. And then she gave him like, I think it was like a profiterole or something, but she had already eaten, it was a box of two, and she had already eaten like one out of it. And I was
Wow.
like, but,
He really wants your leftover half
and then
eaten.
he was like, oh, thank you.
Mhm.
And then when she left, he just threw it in the bin.
Yeah, of course.
It's like a bit of a bit of dignity
Yeah,
with our help.
goes a long way.
Um, So employment,
Yes.
why is it apart from the mental health issue
Hmm.
and people's kind of outlook on life, tell us what House of Cinn is, tell us the purpose of House of Cinn, and then we'll talk about homelessness and unemployment.
Yeah. So House of Cinn is a community interest company, which means that it's a business, so it's not a
Hmm.
non-profit. It operates to generate profit, but with the purpose of benefiting the community.
Okay.
Um, and the heart behind House of Cinn, it's a cinnamon bun bakery. Um, that's our kind of niche product. It's really simple. We make them fun and tasty, but the heart behind it
Yum.
was was really us just the street calf group thinking, okay, look, we have guys that we
Hmm.
know very well, that we have built social support networks around,
Hmm.
that are starting to see some kind of hope and starting to regain confidence in themselves.
Mm.
How do we help them further? And there are employment charities that exist and do amazing work, but I'd say nearly all of our clients at Street Calf that we work with
Hmm.
don't engage in any other charity.
Okay.
They have a lot of mistrust and
Mm.
sometimes even borderline paranoia about charities where they don't have a relationship with any kind of member of staff or volunteer.
Hmm.
And so I would tell guys, oh, X charity has this employment program, this place has this. And they would be reluctant to go. It's like, it's quite a big step for somebody who has probably experienced a lot of hurt and rejection and betrayal to get them into a place
Mm.
where they have no one to rely on in the first
Yeah.
place, to take a step out of reaching out to a company where they know no one, have never been before, and it can just be just a bit too overwhelming and too daunting to make the first
Yeah.
step. And I had a guy tell me, if you recommend me to somewhere that you've been and they know you there and you can take me there, I'll go,
Yeah.
because I know that you wouldn't take me anywhere where the people aren't good. And he said, and
Mm.
I'll do a good job there because I wouldn't want to let you down.
Oh.
And for me, that conversation just highlighted how important trust is in the
Yeah.
process, not just building the social support networks, but now giving somebody back the tools for financial empowerment. It's not
Mm.
something that you can do in isolation from that trust.
Yeah.
And so we were thinking about how can we have a business that's able to generate income to
Mm.
not only support street cafes activity, so we're not completely reliant on donations, but also offer our service users a role in this community business that we're building, that they feel like they have a role, they have a part to play, you know, they have a role. They're not just our service users who come, we chat to them, they get pizza, you know, they have a part to play in this community, and they can be reintroduced into the workspace in a way that is comfortable for them and is not just like go and get a job easy, you know, because for a lot of guys that are entrenched rough sleepers, they've been out of work for a long time. And so one of the guys that we're hoping to start training with House of Cinn now, we're taking a very, very, very gentle approach because we know him well. We know what he likes and what he doesn't like. And right now he doesn't need a full-time job. He just needs a new activity that he feels engaged in and that he enjoys, because for a long time in his life he hasn't enjoyed anything. And so I think for us, House of Cinn is it's about giving people the tools to get that financial empowerment, but us leveraging the relationships and the trust that we build in Street Caf to make sure it's done in a sustainable way. Because somebody can get into a job for 3 months, even a year, and fall back into the cycle of homelessness if they don't have the support and the right community around them in that job. And so it's about making sure that we're with these guys for the long haul, you know, and not just saying, we want to be your friend, help you get off the street, now go and find your own job. You know, it's like, we're here to help you throughout the journey. If you need help in adjusting to the routine of getting back to work, and you want to come and train at the bakery once a week and just even get your mindset back into the frame of being part of something and working on something, I think it's about having this kind of individualized, personalized way of getting somebody back into that routine, and not having like a cookie cutter system, you know, where we expect people to arrive at House of Cinn in a certain way, you know. I feel like I'm rambling a bit. I don't know if I explain the heart behind what we do a lot. It's that in black and white, it's employment opportunities and financial empowerment, but it's in an environment that's built on community, you know. I think offering those things in isolation, I don't think is enough to produce a long-term sustained change. And one of the things that we wanted to make part of the ethos of House of Cinn is that we're in an ideal world, we'll get the guys that we're working with to a stage where they're part of House of Cinn, they enjoy the business, but we can also work with them to say, okay, now long term, what kind of place would you like to work in, you know, what kind of dream or ambition do you have, and make steps to connect them into a path that they want to be in long term, you know. And that's the heart behind it.
I love that. It's so funny because when I was thinking about a title for this podcast, I was like, what does cinnamon buns have to do with homelessness? And that's what I was thinking for the title. And I think that you've really answered that really well. It's unexpected partnerships, but it makes sense. Why would you say that you are, well, actually not just you, I feel like our whole team is very passionate about what we do. I feel like people have an idea of what they think they're going to be doing when they join Street Caf. Like, they're just like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible about the homeless situation in London and I want to help. And I feel like people often see it as a very servitude role. And when they join Street Caf, they're like, oh my gosh, it's relationship. Like some days I'm just walking around, I'm thinking of some of our services. I'm like, I wonder what they're doing today. I wonder what this person is doing today. And it just becomes friendship. Where does that passion, love come from?
I honestly, I don't know. I think it came as a surprise to me as well when I first started volunteering with this stuff. I think it grabs you by the heart, you know. You see people who are genuine and who are just pure at heart, you know, guys that just want to have a chat with you and help you as much as you help them, you know. Like, how would you not build friendships with these people? I think it's I don't know, I think that's a difficult question to answer. I think it's a good question because it's like how there are so many other ways of volunteering that are very transactional.
Mm.
You know, the service user comes into the situation, they get a handout meal, you tick your do good for the week, and then that's it. But I feel like we build something that is it's a community of friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love it, and I can't wait to continue seeing all the growth, because I feel like when I joined, in fact, I feel like people should know what we were doing when I joined Street Calf. We have about 10 minutes left, but I feel like people
Yeah.
should know what we were doing when we started Street Calf.
Awesome.
Isha was dragging us out
Oh, do
Sunday,
you know what? Let me
8
just
a.m.
interrupt
in the
before you
morning,
slander my
cold,
name.
no, hail.
Come rain or shine. Do you know what? I love that, because that was the sentiment that I wanted to echo so much throughout it, was that we were not going to build a service that was not consistent for these people, you know,
Yeah,
that whatever the weather was, however uncomfortable it was for us, if we promised to do tea and coffee every Sunday, we were going to do it, you know?
yeah,
And yeah, that's what we were doing at the start. I think from September 2017, I don't even think we had a table at this point. We had some urns, hot drinks, and we were just serving drinks on the street.
yeah.
That's what it looked like.
With a
At some
fanny
point,
pack.
at some point we got a table, a nice fold-out table that we would fold out in the middle of a middle of the street. It was literally the middle of a street at 8 a.m. on a Sunday, and we'd have hot drinks from there. And yeah, that's what we were that was us for a good year and a half,
Yeah,
up until summer of last year. Yeah.
great. Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit. Um, Actually, before I put you on the spot, we moved
Cool.
from hot drinks to
Mhm.
sandwiches. From sandwiches, we moved from. I feel like there's some days where we've run out of milk and have had to run into Pret and be like, "Hi guys,
Oh,
so
100.
this is what we're doing. Do you mind
Yeah.
sparing us some milk?" And they're like, "Sure, you can have some milk." um, Running around, then getting our own space in
Yeah.
Bruce's house, working from there, and doing outreach, and then now moving forward. How do you see us moving forward? Isha's our boss.
The boss. I think moving forward, I see us just becoming stronger and way more intentional about how
Mm.
we focus on the one.
Mm-hmm.
I think for a long time we've done street outreach, has always been a core part of what we do, going on the streets and trying to find people and talk to
Mm-hmm.
them.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in terms of innovating and moving with feedback, I hear a lot from our outreach teams that it's very hard to see the same person more than once.
Yeah.
In a city like London, a lot of people come and go, and that makes it hard to build consistent relationships. You don't know you don't know if you're going to see somebody or not next week. So I
Mm-hmm.
think in the future we're going to focus on having smaller, focused outreach teams who consistently go back to the same area with the same people and look out for the same people and try to build relationships with a single person and so within our big team have loads of smaller teams who are focused on helping that one person get off the street.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Well, I can't wait. I can't wait to get back to serving in whatever
Me too.
capacity that might be once COVID once we get the all clear with everything
Yeah,
going on.
exactly.
So now back to putting you on the spot.
Let's
What
have
would
it.
be your advice to people who are like, I really have a heart for humanitarianism. I really love people. I have a heart. I want to serve people, but I don't know how to create a nonprofit. I don't know what the process is like. I don't know. They're a bit confused about starting a nonprofit.
I would say, because to be honest, with Street Cafe, I kind of fell into
Mm,
it. I never sat down and said to myself, you know what, one day I'm going to register a charitable organization, I'm going to be a trustee of it, and we're going to build a community interest company, and we're going to run a social enterprise and charity alongside each other. I just started volunteering with an existing homeless organization, and I learned everything that I know about volunteering from there. And so I'd say first step is that if there's a general area that you're interested in, even if there's not a charity doing the exact thing that you want to do, Even just volunteering with a charity in that general area helps a lot. So the charity that I started volunteering was Greenlight. So they do medical care for the homeless. And that wasn't my particular, like, my passion has always been the community side of things.
Yeah.
But volunteering there exposed me to something that I would never have been able to learn that from YouTube or the internet, you know? So I think getting out there and doing some volunteering work is an amazing start. And if there's no organization working in the space that you are, I'd say, I mean, Street Caf started with me messaging like literally every person that I knew, being like, hey, I'm starting this thing Sunday mornings, 8 a.m. Can you come? So like, just, you never know who's going to reply to you and say, yeah, you know what, actually, I'm really interested in this too. Yeah. So I'd say talk to the people that you're friends with, tell them what you want to do. And I mean, you don't have to be a registered charity or a registered non-profit to go out and talk to people or to do a one-off initiative helping people. So I think in that sense, start volunteering somewhere else if you can. If you can't, start small with the people that you know, and just you can just try a one-off thing. A one-off thing can turn into a monthly thing. And Street Caf has been running as a volunteer group, unincorporated, since September 2017, and now we're taking the steps to incorporate and become an official charity. But it's not something that I would have been able to do. I don't even think I would have advised myself to do that at the start. Yeah. So I think I would just say take it slow and do small steps, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think just start.
Exactly.
Just start.
And small. Don't, because honestly, the application, the registration for the charities, the bank accounts, like, it's not something that you're going to be able to do overnight. Even I'm struggling to do it now, you know? It's something that you need a solid team of people to be behind as well. So I wouldn't go into that kind of blindly.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Itse. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm sure that there's so many people who will learn so much from everything that we've said, because for us, it's just having normal conversation. It's what we're used to talking about, what we know that we think. But it's great to be able to enlighten people, bring people along the journey. I'm going to put all the information for Street Caf and House of Cinn so that you can support, you can get involved, you can buy cinnamon buns.
Awesome.
Thanks, Itse.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, everyone listening, make sure to check out our website. We're always looking for new volunteers. And so
join the team. Don't worry, it's not on Sunday at 8 a.m. anymore.
These people are lucky. Do you know what? We might just change it back just so that we can give newbies a taste of what it was really like. Crew, you know, that suffering that we did. The winter was the worst because you're waking up in the dark. But anyway,
getting the train at 7 a.m.
in the cold, in the dark, just to go and stand outside and shiver. But you know what?
But we did it.
We moved.
We moved. Thanks, Itse.
Thank you, Taya.